Greetings and welcome to Alpha Bravo Pinball. My name is Andre, and today on the program, everything about Texas Pinball Festival 2025. We'll recap the show. There were a ton of games by pretty much every manufacturer there, including the latest from Stern, Jersey Jack, Chicago Gaming, Barrels of Fun, American Pinball, Multimorphic, Spooky, Pedretti, Turner Pinball, and yes, even Homepin, folks. An incredible set of games. I'll show you what I played and we'll talk about them too. I'll be the first to admit this video is a bit experimental for me. I've never done a show recap like this before, but I brought a camera, I recorded a ton of footage, and I had no idea if I would make something of it, but here we go. Regardless of how this one turns out, have no fear, I'll be back to my usual deep dive videos soon enough. Anyway, with that, let's get started. Taking place every year in the spring, this year, Texas Pinball Festival once again took place in the Embassy Suites in Frisco, a suburb of Dallas, Texas. This is a long-running show that's been around a while, although I haven't been able to go myself since 2019, when it was in the same location then too. This year, I was there for all 3 days of the show, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. When arriving on Friday afternoon for registration, you would have been greeted with this line for registration, an absolutely monster line, but thankfully it was moving at a pretty good pace. Most of the show takes place within the exhibit hall, although there were some booths set up in the overflow area of the convention center hallway as well. I'll have more tips on attending the show later on in the video, but for now, I've been asked by friends and family many times, just what is a pinball convention and what do you do there? Well, you play pinball, of course. There's just a ton of games at the show, both new and old. It's an opportunity to both see and play classic games spanning many decades, as well as to see the latest games being made today. New game manufacturers are either there themselves or represented by one of their distributors. But in either case, if you want to see the latest games from pretty much everyone, TPF is a pretty great show to attend. Some games, either old or new, are actually for sale at the show, although for me traveling from California, that wasn't really something I was aiming to do. Other things you can do at the show are shop for parts and upgrades, attend seminars given by the folks who make pinball machines themselves, as well as compete in tournaments. My main focus there, however, was seeing and playing games though. So at this point in the video, I'm going to take you through each manufacturer's main game area. I'll show you what games they had, and of course, since I played pretty much everything, I'll give you some quick thoughts on the games as well. Note that the video quality here may not be up to my usual standards. The lighting conditions in the hall were especially challenging with these giant light fixtures above, so apologies in advance for any glare you see in the games. In the center of the hall, with probably one of the largest booths at the show, of course, was Stern, the 1,000-pound gorilla of the pinball industry. They were primarily featuring Dungeons & Dragons, of course, their latest game, and they had both the pro and premium versions of the game available to play. It was great being able to play both of those back-to-back. They had a bunch of their other titles there as well, of course, but because I've gotten plenty of playtimes on those games already before recently, pretty much I only waited in line to play Dungeons & Dragons there. If you're at a show, by the way, don't be this guy playing a 4-player game all by himself. This is just terrible etiquette. Anyway, Stern had a few of their staff there at the show, including the two main designers of the game, Sir Brian Eddy, as well as the always affable Dwight Sullivan. As you're seeing here, I had a portable camera set up with me to record not only the game itself in the hall, but also record a bit of gameplay footage of everything I played. And in a hilarious moment, Dwight thought I had the camera smack in front of the game to not lose sight of it while playing. He moved it for me thinking he was helping me see the game better, but not realizing I was actually recording the gameplay footage. Dwight, you're awesome. It was great chatting with you about the game at the show, and I hope to see you again at shows in the future. But yeah, it's worth pointing out here that getting to talk with the folks who actually make these games is one of the main benefits of coming out to a show like this. Really cool to discuss with them directly, and if you have any questions that you want answered. Anyway, a few thoughts on Dungeons & Dragons specifically. I love it. Instant hit, in my opinion. It's really cool to see Brian Eddy do a 3-flipper game, his first since going back to his very first game at Williams, The Shadow. I was only able to scratch the surface of gameplay, of course, but it's just instantly obvious how much the design team of this game poured their heart and soul into this machine. The dragon mech is so cool and one of the most impressive mechanisms I've seen on a game in a long time, in my opinion. So yes, I definitely want to get more game time on this machine sometime soon. Dwight Sullivan and Brianetti also presented a seminar on the making of Dungeons & Dragons, and they just did an excellent, excellent job. They had a nice slideshow with tons of photos showing the development of the game, and their seminar was just really well prepared and put together. Brianetti even had a small gift for everyone attending, a small build-it-yourself dragon kit made with pinball plastics. What a class act. Thanks, Brian. Anyway, 2 big thumbs up on the Stern presence at Texas Pinball Festival. This was probably the biggest highlight of the show for me. All right next to Stern in the hall, we have Jersey Jack Pinball. They probably had one of the largest booths at the show alongside Stern, but as Jersey Jack doesn't really have a new game right now, they were mostly showing off their existing titles, Avatar and Elton John. I did play Avatar. This one here is a collector's edition, and wow, it sure is pretty. This is a game I've talked about in a previous video, and my thoughts haven't really changed on this one. It's a great game for sure, but it's just too expensive. The amount of fun per dollar just isn't there for me, not at brand new prices anyway. Who knows, maybe a used one in the future, depending on how the depreciation goes on it, we'll see. And I'll say, as much as that collector's edition is impressive, the experience on the cheaper limited edition is 98% as good, in my opinion. That would be the one to get, at least for me. Anyway, it was great to see JJP at the show. Hi, Jack. Speaking of Jack, he did drop a bit of a bomb during his seminar that JJP would be making a Harry Potter pinball machine this year. It's interesting that we would pre-announce the game like this. It's not typically something you see pinball manufacturers do. They're typically just trying to sell you the games they have available right now. He clearly doesn't want people spending money on the other new games shown here at the show. But what about his own Avatar and Elton John? I don't know, maybe he's not worried about those, but it sure is interesting that he pre-announced it. Spooky Pinball was at the show with their new release, Evil Dead, and wow, they had a heck of a presence, bringing a bunch of copies of the game. Especially for a new game like this, having multiple copies there is just awesome. There's a bunch of people at the show, of course, and everyone wants to play the shiny new thing, so it really helps with the lines, the wait times to have more than one copy of the game. Thoughts on Evil Dead? Overall, wow, I'm super impressed. The artwork by Chris Franchi is incredible. The topper is super, super cool. The theme integration is just off the hook good. This is a real world under glass game. There's no question about it. And it's a wide body game that's just crammed with shots and mechs. It's almost overwhelming when you play the game how much stuff is in there. Overwhelming in a good way, I'd say, though. My only worry about getting one of these is that there's so much stuff in there. There's a lot that can go wrong maintenance-wise. I'm fully aware how that sounds and that a manufacturer just can't win there. If they don't put a lot of stuff in the game, folks will complain it's empty and you're not getting your money's worth, etc. Yet here I am with the opposite argument. So yeah, I'm aware of how that sounds. I'm not really saying this as a complaint so much. It's just something to be aware of as a buyer. There are pros and cons to everything, and that's just kind of my only concern about this game. If that's my only hesitation about this game, though, wow, that says something. Overall, this might be Spooky's best game yet. Definitely can't wait to play this again in the future. I also went to the Spooky seminar, by the way, which was more of a Q&A with the designers of the game. It was nice hearing the behind-the-scenes stories about the game, but compared to Stern's seminar, which was just top-notch, the Spooky seminar, I'd say, had a greater diversity of professionalism in the presenters on stage. Something that for me personally didn't reflect very super highly of the company as a whole. There's room for improvement there for sure. Next, we have Multimorphic with their P3 system. Shown, and for the first time at the show, was their new Portal game kit. If you're not familiar with the P3, it is a multi-game system where you can switch between games within the same cabinet by swapping out modules at the back of the playfield. Portal is evidently going to be a super hot title for them. There's been an incredible amount of enthusiasm for this release, and you could just see it in the lines at their booths to play it. But with that said, they did only have 3 copies of the game, 2 of their extended version and 1 standard. The lines were moving really slow at their booth too. I think their games were just playing a little bit too slow and too easy. It sure wasn't fun standing around there waiting to play this one. Anyway, about the P3, one of the main complaints you'll hear about the P3 system is how most of the mechanisms and shots that make each game unique are crammed in the very back of the game in the swappable module. You can see this in their prior games, many of which were on display at the show and that I played as well. Here's Weird Al, for instance, and Final Resistance. Their game Heist does have a pretty cool crane mech that would swing over the lower part of the playfield, but that's about it in terms of physical interaction on the lower part of their games, though. Portal is their first game to feature ramps over the actual screen, but only on the extended version. I only got to play the standard version, and yeah, I didn't find it particularly compelling how all the shots are at the back. They're pretty much all at the same distance from the player. What they've said is they're selling a standard version to make it quicker and easier for folks who want to swap between modules from one game or another. But I don't know, this version of the game just reinforces everyone's notion that everything is all in the back. If I were getting one of these, no question, it would be the extended version. To me, the fact that I can have multiple games I rotate between in one cabinet is definitely the most compelling part of the P3 system. Like many collectors, I'm out of space. I can't get a new game without getting rid of an old one, and I like all my games. I don't really want to sell any of them. But even with Portal, I have to say Multimorphic hasn't sold me yet on the P3 system, personally. I still prefer traditional pinball machines and had more fun playing Dungeons & Dragons and Evil Dead at the show. Turner Pinball is another company that debuted a game at the show, and that's Merlin's Arcade. They had a few copies of the game. If you're not familiar with them, this is just their second game ever after their first release, Ninja Eclipse, which was also at the show. I got to play both games, and so I'll start with Ninja Eclipse. For the first game ever from a new company, I have to say it's pretty impressive. Not quite as impressive as the first game from another brand new company, Barrels of Fun, with their Labyrinth machine, but nevertheless pretty good. That top flipper on Ninja Eclipse is for sure going to take a beating as it sticks out well into the center of the game and isn't protected by posts or anything, but I like that the layout is different than what you'd normally expect, and I did have fun playing it. Merlin's Arcade, however, which they just announced just before the show and were showing for the first time there, as far as I know, definitely steps it to the next level. The layout is a bit more standard, I'd say, and was designed by John Norris, who's a longtime veteran of the pinball industry. And in almost every way, I thought this game was more impressive than their first. I can't say I'm ready to put down cash for this game. It's the company. I just need to see if they can stand the test of time a little bit longer. But if you want something different than everyone else's game, or you just want to support a young company, Merlin's Arcade might be a good choice. Next, we have Chicago Gaming, manufacturer of both remake titles under license from Planetary Pinball, as well as manufacturer of brand new design game from Play Mechanics, and that's Pulp Fiction. Nothing new to report on Pulp Fiction, except that I did play the game at the show, including the LE, and wow, that topper sure does look nice in person, and it's a fun game. On the remake side, there were a couple pieces of news. First, on Cactus Canyon, they finally released a code update for the game that was promised a while back, an expansion to the original rule set as conceived by Josh Sharp and the legendary Lyman Sheets, rest in peace. It's fantastic to see that version finally released. Note that the code update comes in a kit that makes some mechanical upgrades to the game too, so it's not just software. I only got to play one game on this, so just scratching the surface, but I hope I get to explore it more thoroughly at some point. In other news from Chicago Gaming, their first remake, Medieval Madness, has been out of stock for a long while now. I guess owners like me are mostly holding on to their games. So there's been enough demand for them to make a new run of machines. They're calling this latest version the Merlin Edition, and it features blue powder coating as well as many of the previous upgrades over the original edition, notably the larger color screen and multicolor lighting system. Listen, Medieval is one of the greatest games of all time as far as I'm concerned, and Chicago Gaming's build quality is just excellent. So if you want a Medieval, it's a no-brainer to get this, although they might have instantly sold out. I don't know if it makes you feel any better, though. I think you're just as well off with the original run remakes, or an original Williams for that matter. I don't particularly care for the multicolor general illumination. I'm very happy keeping my original run remake machine personally. Another licensee from Planetary doing remakes of classic Williams games is a company called Pedretti. They had a few of their Funhouse remakes at the show in two versions, one with the original Funhouse artwork and another with an all-new art package. Here I am playing the new artwork version. What can I say? It's a Funhouse. If you want a brand new in-box Funhouse, well, this is the game to get. I'm surprised this is the first title they decided to issue as a remake. Original Funhouses are not particularly hard to find on the used market, nor do they command big price premiums compared to some other classic Williams games. In terms of the remake, how did they do delivering on the Funhouse experience? Well, having owned an original for over a decade, it's right back there. I think I'm in a pretty good position to comment on how this game plays. I actually think it played reasonably well. The flippers were a bit weak, and it's probably my main complaint, but that can happen at shows where the flipper coils tend to get quite hot with continuous play. But actually, my greater complaint about the Funhouse remake is the lighting. On this front, I give it a straight-up F for fail. They did not at all strike a good balance between the insert lighting intensity and the general illumination intensity. If you're not familiar with these terms, the inserts are the colored light lenses that show you what shots are active on a game, and the general illumination are lights that stick up over the top of the playfield and light up the game. The inserts on this game are just way too strong compared to the general illumination, and their choice of LED bulbs isn't great. The whole thing is just way too harsh. The effect is even worse in real life than it is on camera, by the way. I would take my original Funhouse with incandescent bulbs over the remake any day of the week. And just for the record, I'm not a poo-pooer of remakes. I'm super happy with my Middle Madness remake, and I think Chicago Gaming did an excellent job recreating what was originally an incandescent bulb game with LEDs, so it can be done right. Let's talk real quick about the other manufacturers with a presence here at the show. First, we have Barrels of Fun, which I mentioned before with their first game, the extremely impressive Labyrinth. This isn't a new title, so I didn't wait in line to play this. However, they have recently said their second game will be announced very soon, and I can't wait to see that. Rumor is it will be based on the recent Dune movies. Next, American Pinball. No new game from them at the show either, although there was a nice lineup of their existing titles. I enjoyed playing Barbecue and Galactic Tank Force. Controversial opinion time, folks. I actually think Barbecue is the better of the two games. I actually quite enjoy the layout art on Barbecue. It's fun to shoot, and crucially, there's just more to shoot. I've always found that the number of shots is just too low on Tank Force, especially considering that large target bank in the center that I don't like shooting. Anyway, I hope to see their next game soon, which is rumored to be Cuphead. And yes, like I mentioned in the intro, even Homepin was represented at the show with their Blues Brothers game. This game is very obviously outclassed by pretty much every other manufacturer in the business today, but it was cool to see and play this game. You definitely don't see these around too much. It's hard to believe all the games I just talked about are games being made brand new today by current manufacturers. We've sure come a long way since the mid-2000s when Stern was the last pinball company standing. It's just incredible. There's much more to play at a show like Texas Pinball Festival than just brand new machines, though. You can play tons of older classic games from past decades. Here's a few of the ones I played just to give you an idea in chronological order. Going all the way back to 1947, Gottlieb's Humpty Dumpty was the very first pinball machine with flippers. A piece of history right here, folks, and you could play it at the show. Super cool. There were several other electromechanical games as well at the show, and I particularly enjoyed seeing this Gottlieb wedge head sitting next to a Williams reverse wedge head. Williams would have inverted the shape of the head to be different than Gottlieb to allow you to pack in more games closer to each other. I'm not sure, but seeing them side by side like this, it was really cool. They were fun to play. By the way, if you've heard anyone complain about the wide flipper gap on some modern recent games like Ghostbusters, for instance, well, that's nothing, folks. Check out the flipper gap on this Williams Travel Time and Gottlieb's Slick Chick. There were a bunch of late 70s and early 80s solid-state games on display, such as the Stern Stingray, Bally Future Spa, and even some rarely seen here international games like this Geiger Lady Death. Then on the more modern side of things, this Williams Party Zone is probably one of the nicest copies of the game I've ever seen, and I had fun with this Gottlieb World Challenge Soccer too. This is just a small sample of the games you could play at the festival. Overall, I'd call the game selection excellent, with a great representation from every era of pinball. That's not all, though. There was even more to see at the show. One company that I thought was just super cool was showing off their accessible pinball controller that allows for playing pinball one-handed. I was just blown away by just how easy this was to pick up and play. From my very first game with this controller, no problem at all. I was instantly able to play one-handed. This is super cool and is a mod that just allows a bunch more people to play pinball that otherwise wouldn't be able to, so well done. My hat's off to them. There was a homebrew section. Is the next Jack Danger among these people? Maybe. It was really cool to see and play these two. There's companies selling parts and mods to repair and upgrade your game at the show as well. And speaking of repairs, yeah, that pinball games break, including at shows, so it was cool to see the work being done to resurrect some down games live at the show. One staple of Texas Pinball Festival in particular is the DeLorean. Indeed, it was there again this year, next to a Back to the Future. That's a theme a lot of people are clamoring for today. They'd like to see a new Back to the Future, but did you know it's been done before in the 90s? Yep, you could play it there. Overall, I'd say Texas Pinball Festival 2025 was just an excellent show, and I had a great time. But was it a perfect show? No, of course not. Nothing is perfect. In an effort to provide a fair and balanced review of the show, at this point I'll just talk quickly about my minor gripes with the show and where I think there's room for improvement. First, the line at registration. What I didn't say in the intro was that line was for people that had prepaid for the show. I myself had bought my registration months before. Unfortunate to nevertheless have to wait in such a line. I wonder if it would be possible to mail the passes out ahead of time. I'd gladly pay for the shipping for this option personally. Second, the haul and selection of games. Past years that I've been to the show, there were definitely more games at the show. This year there was this one big kind of awkward empty area in particular that stood out a bit. In particular, why some of the other booths had to be in the hallway outside the convention hall when there's this big empty space inside it. I'm not sure what was going on there, but I could also definitely not do with vendors selling obviously unlicensed merchandise that had nothing to do with pinball. Finally, in the past, I've been able to stay right in the hotel of the convention center, but it seems like with the popularity of the show recently, that's been more and more impossible. We were lucky with good weather outside this year, so I didn't mind staying at another one of the nearby hotels, which thankfully there are several of, but if it were colder or rainier weather, it wouldn't have been as nice, that's for sure. Lastly, a few tips if you go to Texas Pinball Festival in the future. First, in terms of its location, I'll mention the Dallas-Fort Worth area is not exactly transit-friendly. Definitely plan on a rental car to get around. This unlocks getting to the show, of course, but also going out for meals. They do have food trucks at the show itself, which was great, but it's worth traveling out of the hotel area and exploring what Dallas has to offer. I had some pretty mind-blowing barbecue on this trip, and it has no joke permanently altered my conception of what barbecue is, and perhaps even spoiled me forever. It's pretty incredible stuff. Second, in terms of the attire, dress for the weather, of course, but a couple other things to keep in mind. Going to a show like this is pretty tiring, so remember some comfortable shoes. You'll be on your feet pretty much the entire day. Thankfully, the carpet in the conference center is a lot more comfortable for your feet than the concrete floors at some other pinball shows, and this helps with the noise too. But on that point, TPF still is really loud. All those games running simultaneously. I got hearing damage warnings from my watch and definitely recommend hearing protection as well. This not only protects your hearing, but if you're like me, it just makes it less tiring to be in the hall for a long period of time too. Finally, last tip, remember there's more than just what's in the main hall itself. The tournament area was tucked away on the second floor this year, and that's worth checking out, as was the seminar room, which was all the way around the corner from the main hall. Easy to forget that that's there. The TPF website did an excellent job listing out everything you can do at the show beyond just the main hall. Well, that's it for today, folks. That was Texas Pinball Festival 2025. If you have any comments or questions about what I saw at the show, feel free to leave them down below. Otherwise, I'll see you next time here on Alpha Bravo Pinball. Go play some pinball, everyone. Have a good night.